Good morning, Rabbi. Welcome to Breakfast in the Class. Breakfast in the Class today is dedicated for the speedy and complete refuah shlema of Rabbi Farhi, Hana Bat Tzima Fega, and as well for the speedy and complete refuah shlema for Rabbi Eli Abadi, Eliyahu Shimon Ben Mazal Fortuna. Dedicated loving member of Mrs. Lily Safra, Aliyah Shalom Nishpat Leah Bat Chana. Her philanthropy has reached so many throughout the entire world. The week of Breakfast in the Class is dedicated for a speedy and complete refuah shlema for Hana Bat Tzima Fega, sponsored by Doctors Habib and Randa Monas. And the week of Cobra was sponsored by David E. Ash in honor of you. We have with us some special friends. Our dear friend who's here from London, Chazak Baruch. I understand as well that your father is an avid listener of the Breakfast in the Class. What is a chut to be able to teach a Torah that gets heard around the world is very special. And as well, our friend who's here, Kanere, with his family also, all the way, a very dear friend, and one of my friend's very dearest friends, Baruch Hashem. Chazak Baruch, welcome back. Baruchim Abayim. Let us begin, my friends. The Parashah begins that with the idea of Vaydaber Hashem Moshe. Hashem speaks to Moshe in the Midbar, and he tells them to count the Jewish people. But what's interesting specifically is the way HaKadosh Baruch Hu says the word count. How do you say count in the Torah? Anyone know? Lispor, okay? Now, where do we know that from? We're in the middle of the Omer. Last night we counted 43, right? What is it called in the Torah when it tells you to count the days? Usfartem lachem. Count for yourself. So how does the Torah say count? Lispor. Or pikod. Pikudehem is the language for count. So let's look at how HaKadosh Baruch Hu says to count the Jewish people. Next word. Count each head, the entire head of the Edah, of the community of the Jewish people, according to their families, lebet avotam, to their fathers' homes, b'mispar shemot, in the number of names, kol zachar legulgalotam, every male according to their heads. And it tells you the criteria for counting, ben esrim, from 20 until 60, ben esrim shana mala, you should count them. So we have the word mispar. We have the word tifkedu, pekod. And with you ish lemate, each person according to their tribe, ish rosh lebet avotav, each person lerosh bet avotav. But what does it not say? What should the verb be? Either one of the two words that we just used. Sifor et rosh bnei adat bnei Israel. Count them. Or pikod, from the word tifkedu that we just saw. But the Torah doesn't use either one of these words. And the question is, why? Now, my friends, let's look at the word that the Torah does use. It does use. Se'u et rosh kol adat bnei Israel. Now, I want to just try and translate that word with you and see maybe what it is that we're trying to understand over here. The Ibn Ezra, on the spot, he says, where does this word come from? Se'u, kemo, just like it says, ki tisa. When you count. Now, let's head over there for 1 second, just so we have a clearer picture of what the Ibn Ezra is drawing a comparison to. Ki tisa is a parasha in Sefer Shemot. And what does it say over there? It tells us that if you're going to count Jews, make sure you count the Jews by using the machatzit shekel. Ki tisa, when you count the Jewish people, this is how you count them. Everybody gives a half a shekel. So, my friends, what are we finding in common in the word ki tisa and in the word se'u et rosh? In each case, the idea is there's a synonymous concept. And the idea is that counting the Jewish people was meant to be something that was se'u et rosh, which was an uplifting experience. Se'u et rosh literally means lift up the person's head. That's what the words actually mean. Now, we've discussed in various iterations, in various classes that we had throughout the week, how could you call the counting process a process which is one which uplifts the head? Everything that we know, especially from Parshat Ki Tisa, is that counting Jewish people results in something which is negative. Right? It restricts Bracha, as we explained in one of the classes a few days ago. But why in the world would we say those words, Se'u et Rosh, lift up the head? I want to give you two understandings of what this means. One, an idea that's brought down from the Akedat Yitzchak, and one that I think is a more general concept. Says the Akedat Yitzchak as follows. What does it mean that counting is something which is negative? What does that mean? Why was it seen as a negative thing? In fact, David HaMelech is punished for the fact, right? For the fact that he counts the Jewish people. Counting Jews brings ayin hara. It's not a good thing. It stops bracha. David HaMelech counted the Jews, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu punished him for it. In fact, the idea that we have of me'ah brachot, 100 blessings every day, where does that come from? David HaMelech made a takana to do so. Right? It's not from the Torah. Right? From the Torah. How many brachot do we have in the Torah, mandated biblically? Machloket, either one or two. One is Birkat HaMazon, that we know for sure. Ve'achalta, ve'sava'ata, u'be'erachta. You will eat, you will become satiated, and you will do a beracha. So we know Birkat HaMazon from the Torah. The other bracha is a machloket. If it's deoraita, that's Birkot HaTorah, the blessings that a person makes over the Torah before you study. Every other bracha in the Torah is biblical. It's, rabbinical, not biblical. It's not from the Torah. So where did David HaMelech, what's this idea of the 100 brachot? Chazal tell us that after the plague, David HaMelech sought to do something that would protect the Jewish people, and as well would be a kapara. And what did he do? He made a takana that we should say 100 brachot every day. By the way, I don't know if you noticed this, just this idea on Shabbat. So one of the reasons that it's not so hard to do 100 brachot a day is because you have 3 silent prayers. Each one of them has 19 brachot in them. Before you did anything else, you already have almost 60. Just from those brachot. Never mind the bracha of Baruch She'amar. Never mind the brachot HaShachar. Never mind the brachot of Kriyat Shema. So there's all these other brachot as part of the regular prayers. On Shabbat, we don't pray 19 blessings, right? Because we have a different Amidah. There's far fewer blessings. So therefore, there's brachot we have to make up. That's why if you're Moroccan, there's a custom that when they make kiddush, after they make the kiddush, they have like a little spread of food, mezonot, hadama, this, that, eating different brachot. Why? Even though you don't need to do that, because you're going to make hamotzi in a minute, all those things would be part of the brachot of the seudah. But the idea is that you need extra brachot. So we're creating the opportunity in between kiddush and hamotzi to be able to add these extra brachot. Chamav writes that's not called unnecessary blessing, bracha she'ena tzricha, which normally is something which is frowned upon in halacha, because ena tzricha indicates that the bracha is not necessary. Here the bracha is necessary for me'ah brachot. Let's come back here. What that means is that counting is a negative thing. Why would we see this as being something which is se'u et rosh, which lifts the heads, which is a positive thing for Am Yisrael? So we shared already one idea. The idea was that the counting of a Jewish person ensures that the person does not become batel. Any davar shebeminyan, something which is counted in the laws of kashrut, in the laws of bitul, of ta'arovet, that thing can no longer be annulled once it's given a number. So the idea was that the Jewish people should never be annulled, never be wiped out, never be batel. But my friends, I want to share with you an amazing idea from the Akedat Yitzchak. Akedat Yitzchak says, why is it that we said, that we learned together, that anything which has a number is not batel? What's the logic that there's no bracha on something which is manui, which is counted? There's no bracha on something which is measured. What's the idea? Says Akedat Yitzchak, amazing. He says, we're reading the Gemara wrong. That's not what it means. What it means is that if you're trying to ascertain what true beracha is really only something that cannot be measured and cannot be counted. You can count how many dollars you have. You can count how many square feet your apartment is. You can count how much horsepower your sports car has. Right? You can count, no problem. You count how many diamonds are on your Rolex. Chazak Baruch. How much is love? How much do you love your wife? That's a number. How badly do you want to raise a Jewish family? How badly do you want to have children? How much pride do your kids get? What's the number? How much does that weigh? You can weigh the gold in your jewelry. You can count the number of dollars you have. But you can't count the important things in life. They're not numbers. And therefore, says the Akedat Yitzchak, in bracha shoreh. It doesn't say that it can't be a bracha. It says in bracha shoreh. You know what shoreh means? It comes to rest. It dwells. Blessing only dwells in things that aren't about numbers. So sometimes people say, oh my gosh, Rabbi, I'm so blessed. Hashtag blessed, right? I asked them, hashtag blessed, Hazaku Baruch. Tell me why you're blessed. And you know what the things that they tell? Oftentimes, they're not the real things. That's not what blessed means. Count for yourself the uncountable things. And that's where true Bracha dwells. Akedat Yitzchak. Very powerful idea. My friends, that partially is Se'u et Rosh Adat B'nai Israel. Make sure the Jewish people understand that they're here for a mission. Why are we counting? Who did we count when we counted the Jews in this counting? Anyone know? I said earlier. The men between 20 to 60 that went to war. Kol Yotzei Tzava. All those that went out to war. That's a strange thing to count. If you're going to war, it's not a strange thing to count the people who are going to war. You want to know exactly how many people you have that are soldiers. But if you're just counting the Jews, why are you counting only that age range? And I think the idea over here is a very powerful one. You know, we like to see ourselves sometimes as God's children. If you're Moshe Rabbeinu, will you see yourself as God's servant? Like the Torah ends and says, Eved Hashem, that Moshe was the servant of God. But you know, we don't often see ourselves as the army of God. The Lubavitcher Rebbe used to talk about this all the time. Tzivot Hashem. We fight for God. The holiest people in Am Yisrael are the Kohanim and the Leviim. And you know why? Because when the Jewish people were worshiping the golden calf, Moshe said, who fights for God? Fight with me. Mi LaHashem Elai. Who is to God? Stand with me. Mi LaHashem Elai. Who stood with Moshe at that hour? The Leviim. And in that moment, the firstborn lost their right to be the Kohanim in the temple, and the Kohanim assumed that role. Mi LaHashem Elai. I mentioned the Chidush the other day that Mi LaHashem Elai, the first letter in each one of those words is Mem Lamed Aleph. Melo. Every day we say in the Kiddusha, right? Melo Chol Haaretz Kivodo. Hashem's glory, it fills the whole world. You know what it means that Hashem's glory fills the world? Melo, mi LaHashem Elai. Where's God's glory? God's glory, His kavod in this world, lives in the people who fight for what Hashem means. Fighting for what Hashem means that you're in the army. Now over here we're talking about physically their age, 20 to 60. But the idea of Se'u et Rosh means any person that wants to be a fighter for God in this world, fighting for God means making a beracha when people are looking at you funny. I remember once I made a beracha on a drink. I made a beracha on some food, but I was with a bunch of people. None of them were Jewish. It was at a random conference that I was at. Okay, as a rabbi, I was the only rabbi, but I was also the only Jew. Everyone else there was like an imam and a priest and a Mormon elder. It was an interesting gathering. All right, it was about persecution that was taking place of the Yazidi nation. Anyway, don't ask. Long story. That's where I found myself. Anyway, I'm making berachot at the breakfast. And English people are very, very polite. So every time I said a bracha, the halakha is, even if no one says amen, you're still not supposed to say a bracha under your breath. You're still supposed to say it loud enough, like ol tefillah, that your ears could hear it. Is there anyone that can unplug the coffee? It sounds like a whale is giving birth. Let's just hear that. Oh, fantastic. Maybe tell them in the kitchen that they should prepare it in the kitchen, and the whale can give birth over there.
Good idea.
All right. I'm so sorry to those who you are listening. We're going to name the whale. No, what was the? That's one of them. What was the one from the movies? Free Willy. We're going to name it Free Willy because unfortunately it needed to be excised from the breakfast in the class. Okay. Bye, Willie. Have a good one. Now, my friends, right? Se'u et Rosh. The question is, are you willing to fight for it? So I'm sitting there. I'm making this beracha. And I'm supposed to tzarich lashmiya leoznav. You have to make, your ears have to hear the blessing that you're saying with your words. You know that? So whenever you're praying, you can't pray quietly enough with your eyes scanning. You also can't pray whispering where you can't hear. If a person's praying, you have to hear with your ears what you're saying. A lot of wisdom in that, so that you yourself should hear what you're praying for. Okay? You know, you're praying that Hashem should bless you to learn Torah. Did you schedule time for Torah? You know, you prayed for refuah shlema, but are you living a life that's promoting a healthy life? Hashem, please heal me. And then the guy is doing drugs. He's, riding on a motorcycle backwards with no helmet. I don't know what he's doing. I don't know why that was my example, or who does that. I'm not sure why I felt I need to use that example. But my friends, many examples. People who eat completely unhealthily, people who do no exercise, people who, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. They drink too much, they sleep too little, you don't take care of your health. So one of the things is a person's ears, you should hear yourself pray. So anyway, I'm praying that each time I have a bracha, I said bracha loud enough that I could hear, but quietly enough, because no one's going to answer amen. So there was this super polite British guy, I think he was a priest, he might have been a pastor, he was sitting next to me. And every time I said the bracha, he's like, pardon me, I'm so sorry, I didn't hear what you said. And every time, the law is after you say the blessing, you're not allowed to speak until you eat. So every time the guy would be like, pardon me, excuse me, I didn't hear what you said. And then I would just shove food in my mouth. And then eat it, the guy's looking at me, right? And then I made a bracha and he goes, oh, pardon me again, I'm so sorry, did you say something this time? This time it was a drink. I was like, no, I didn't, I just said it's a blessing. My friends, okay? Mila Shem Elai means, you're the weirdo making brachot that everyone thinks you're talking to yourself, you're schizophrenic. That's fighting for Hashem. Fighting for Hashem means that in every instance, in every circumstance in your life, you're seeking to make a kiddush Hashem. You see someone being taken advantage of, it's not your problem, but you don't stand by it. That's milah Shem Elai, okay? So one of the things is se'u et adat, Hashem's counting the people in his army, yani. And that's something that lifts your head because you realize that that's your purpose in this world. My friends, the second idea I wanted to drive home in this se'u et rosh ben kol adat b'nei Israel is that it happens to be that in this instance, the way Moshe Rabbeinu he counted the Jewish people, was he was commanded to do so in a way that raised their heads, that made them feel important, that made them feel worthwhile, correct? What that means to me is something I think which is very profound. In every instance a person experiences in their life, every interaction, there are two ways that a person can interact. One way there's a non-se'u et rosh approach to counting, which is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, without explaining the significance of what you're doing to the person. And then there's a se'u et rosh adat b'nei Israel, where you're lifting up the head. We have an opportunity in every interaction, in every conversation, to have the conversation be nothing, unmotivating, uninspiring, unheadlifting. I know that's not a word, but yes. Or you have the opportunity for it to be an inspiring, motivating, headlifting one. As an example, you call in your PA assistant secretary into the office and you say, please take care of this page, of this document. Please make sure to email these, these orders. Please, and that's all you said. What did you do? You gave her a commandment. Or you gave him, instruction. You gave him instructions, okay? That's all you did, right? You did nothing more than that. But my friends, that opportunity, that interaction offered an opportunity. I don't know if you've ever had a scenario where you've needed someone on your team or in your family to step up. Have you ever had that? As an example, you and your wife are away on vacation. One of the kids is babysitting. The other kid is having a meltdown, doesn't want to go to school. You can't get back in time to be able to help. Thank you so much. You can't be able to get back. You don't have the ability to get back in time to make sure that the kid gets on the bus. So what do you have to do right then? You tell your kid, who's not old enough to be able to manage a screaming child, what do you say? Honey, Daddy and Mommy, Abba and Ima, we're away on vacation. I'm in Israel now. I'm in Florida. I'm wherever you happen to vacation, okay? We can't get her on the bus. We can't get him to school. I need you to stand up. I need you to be strong. I need you to be the oldest in the house. I need you to. All of a sudden, the kid, instead of seeing this as a responsibility that's being given, instead of seeing this as a task that's being commanded, they see this as a moment where their parents believe that they are capable of something. Now, maybe they don't understand that you only believe that out of desperation and having no other option. But the opportunity is presenting itself as a parent to be able to say to your child, I believe in you. You can do this. They're crying. You're so creative, honey. Figure out some way to distract the child. That's basically what 90% of parenting is. Kid falls, about to cry, you're like, hey! hey, kid stops crying. Kid falls, runs into a wall. You tell him, oh my gosh, the wall is such a terrible, can't believe it hit you. You smack the wall. Kid's laughing. 90% of young parenting is distracting the child. You're so creative. You tell the child that. What does the kid feel? What we're learning over here is a lesson which is not only about counting. What we're learning over here is that the pasuk could have said sefor, count. It could have said pekod, count. Do this. Commandment, verb, action. Or the Torah said, it used the same commandment, but couched it in the terms of raising someone's head. Rohi, you're good, you're strong, you're special, you can. I want to give one example of what this looks like. I remember years and years ago, we were on a trip, and on this trip we had lots of different young students that were new to Judaism. So on the ride, we had with us one rabbi who had never, what they call green, right? Fresh off the boat from Israel, right? Had never really taught classes, especially not to people that weren't so religious. So it's a daunting thing. You're a rabbi, you're your peers, you grew up religious, everyone you know is religious. Now you have to give a class to a bunch of kids from a very secular school, guys, girls. You don't really know if they're going to appreciate what you're saying, understand the way you mean it, etc., etc. So he was bugging out, that he would have to teach. What happened? Unfortunately, in the middle of the trip, one of the students in the trip, one of the kids, had an emergency and had to be taken to the hospital. The only staff member that could take them to the hospital was me. So I had to travel with this kid in an ambulance, right, to the hospital. Anyway, I called this young rabbi in, new, green, right, green. I said to him, I'm not going to get back in time for the class. It's a very important class. You know what this class is about and why it's so important to teach on this trip, right? Part of what we do when we take a trip like that is we teach foundational Judaism. You're not going to teach a random class. Each and every class was picked, hand-chosen. If you're only going to have 10, 5, 7, 8, 10 classes, which classes do you choose? If you have one shot, right, to be able to communicate, to talk to a Jewish neshama on a trip to New York or Australia or South Africa, wherever you went, which 10 things do you want, which 10 classes do you want to focus on? So there's a lot of thought that goes into it. I'm going to miss this class, it's a big deal. It's a very important class. I called the guy in. I said, listen, I'm not going to be back in time. And he's already going like this. No. I said to him, you must teach this class. He says, I can't, I didn't prepare it, I didn't this, I didn't that. They're gonna tear me up alive, I don't know. It's gonna be a disaster. I said to him, look, I'm going. The only one here is you. If it's not you, it's nobody. Do you want on your head the fact that we missed out on such an important thing, that the future of these Jewish kids may be forever altered because I was not here and you didn't step up? You've been learning Torah your whole life. If I asked you to just recite the Torah and Judaism that you knew, you could speak right now for 3 weeks. Get in the game. I was Coach Cartering him, let's go. You need to talk to them about what it means to live a life that includes faith in God. You need to talk to them about this. So I said, my examples are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Those are my examples. This is how I teach it. But I trust you. I don't want you don't have to teach my class. I'm not going to teach you how to teach my class. What does it mean to you in 2020, whatever the year was? I remember, obviously it wasn't, I was already here by then, right? What does it mean to you in this world to live a life of faith? How does that differ from someone that lives life without faith in God? What does that mean? You translate it, you teach it to them. I want to tell you something. This guy's a young guy, but some of the students came back and said it was a talk, one of the talks that moved them the most on the entire trip. I wasn't in the class, but I asked him after the class, I said, they really enjoyed it. You were very nervous about how it would turn out. Tell me one thing. Did you teach anything that I told you to teach? He said, no, I'm so sorry. I got into it. I just kept talking about da-da-da, and it was very personal. And I talked to them about one of the things that I struggled with when I was becoming a rabbi. And I talked to them about how, my emunah helped me through that very difficult time. And everyone was sharing in the room, how they dealt with difficult times and how they prayed even though they never prayed before, how they prayed in English, how they felt God's help, how they felt God's support coming. I said, look, I want you to remember, because now you saw what happened when there was nobody else. You stepped up, you hit a grand slam. Everybody loved it. You didn't need anybody else's material. You didn't need to copy anybody else. You were the man. Just remember that the same guy that was in that room when I was away is going to be the guy while I'm here. Now that I'm here and you're here and you think you should default to me, I'd like to ask you to give another one of the classes. But you know what happened? After he had that moment in the sun and he saw that he was capable, he said, okay, sure. Which one do you want me to teach? From a guy that was melting into a puddle of water at the thought of having to teach a Torah class. All it took was someone saying, I'm not here, you're here. You need to do this. You can do this. I believe in you. That was enough. I could have said, I'm your boss, teach the class. I could have said that. That's sefor. That's pikod. But in every interaction, we have the opportunity, the choice, to be able to use it as a command or as something which is su'et rosh. Our world today is a world which is depressed. Children, young people, everybody is sad, everybody is broken, everybody needs therapy. That's what our world looks like. And by the way, we, the adults that did not grow up in that world, need to realize that we can't just say, get it together. You don't know the mind of someone that lives in the world of today, that lives with their world online. You think someone posted something online about you and now you're falling apart, this, that, they made a comment, who cares? That someone made a comment on your social media, who cares? But you don't understand that for them, that is their world. That's where they live. That's how their value, for many young people, their value is described to them by how many followers, what people said online. Now, we could shake our heads and say it shouldn't be that way, and we're right, it shouldn't be that way. But it is that way. So they need help. Don't minimize that. Instead, si'u'et rosh. How many times does a young person come to their parents and tell them they're struggling with something? And what is the response of the parents? Not because they're mean, not because they're bad, they just don't know better. Why are you letting this get to you? Why are you being such a baby? You took the chance, you had an opportunity to say something in a way which was si'u'et rosh, and you squandered the opportunity. We should be looking for opportunities to lift. My friends, and I'll end with this. One other thing I want to say. If your kids come to you for a problem, and there's issue, they fell in a trap, they made a mistake, they did not pass the test, they fell short, remember, you have the choice of lifting them or not. But I'll tell you one thing. If you chose not to, if you thought with all your wisdom that was the time to yell at them, one thing I can tell you for sure, they're not coming to you again with any of their problems. And one of the scary things is what happens when young people, instead of coming to their parents for advice, for guidance, they go to whomever else. And you don't know who they're going to. And you don't know who they start looking up to as a mentor or father figure. So you get that chance to lift. Don't miss it. I love the idea that the Torah could have said count, and it chose to say the same word, but in a way which is uplifting. In every interaction, we get that choice. Just make sure that you do it the right way.